Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by producer, writer, and director Christian Ackerman. Christian, how you doing today, man?
What's up, Ken? I'm good. How you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come hang out with us for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I haven't been on a podcast in a few months. It's been a while.
And I'm so honored, man. For those of you that don't know, Christian actually started out as a production assistant on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Since then, he's actually produced 25 feature films, including Portal, Deadly Reunion, Bethany, many more. In 2018, he spearheaded my favorite horror movie, not my first, but my favorite trilogy of books. Also worked with Slayer on one of their big, what was the Slayer thing that you did? I know it was pretty big with Felissa Rose as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Felissa brought me on. That was 2 music videos for them, and then that eventually morphed into a trilogy. Well, it was already 1 video, but so that became a trilogy, and then that became a movie that got released with a live, like one of their last concerts at the Forum, and got into a lot of theaters, like a one night only kind of thing. So.
That's so rad.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to talk about, I don't know how much we can really talk about it yet, but the creator of Joe Bob's Haunted Drive-In. That's something I'm so excited about. What can you tell us about that?
It's a Halloween haunt immersive event, kind of mixed together with a film festival. So we've gotten a ton of film submissions, and so we're sifting through all those. We're going to choose those, and then Joe Bob Briggs is going to record. We'll record commentary of him talking about each of the films, presenting them with his partner Darcy the Mail Girl and Felissa Rose. And then as the night goes on, people in there, and we're only going to be doing this at drive-ins. So as the night goes on, people will start to look to the side and left and right of their car and start to notice there's some weird things going on outside. And then it's basically people that are kind of turning into zombies as as the night progresses. They get more intense as it goes. And then what's happening on screen with Joe Bob and his team starts to morph into what's going on the ground level. So something kind of new.
That is so awesome. And where can people check this out at?
We're so far we haven't announced where we're but it's going to be in LA. Yeah. So we have several nights that we're working on in LA, but so it will be announced probably. Well, I don't know when this is going to air, but it'll probably be announced before this airs, maybe, I assume. So
sure.
In the next day.
And for those of you that want to check this stuff out, I got all his links down here in the description as well. So you guys can follow him on social media, check out some of the stuff he does. Like I said, he's a very busy guy, works very hard at the things he's been doing. I also, down here, we got my favorite horror movie trilogy of books. Check these out down here. Buy these. It's always fun to learn about people's favorite horror movie, their first horror movie. This is something to me that's super cool. And when I heard about you doing my favorite horror movie trilogy of books, I knew this is something that I had to pursue that to get you on here, because it's such a great idea to talk about people's favorite horror movie, their first horror movie. And it just shows how connected people in the horror community are. So what gave you the idea to really start with my favorite horror movie? Is that just something that you've always talked to people about, or was it just kind of a spur of the moment type thing?
I guess that's always something that we all kind of discuss every once in a while, like who's your favorite band, who's your favorite, what's your favorite color, that kind of thing when you're a little kid. But so if we're all connected in horror, we always want to, that's a good question, or a good introductory question to even ask somebody you just met. Right. And so I just wanted to make a book, and I decided, okay, well, what's a good subject matter? And do I was in the middle of making a lot of movies for a company, and I couldn't, I couldn't write a whole book, well, I guess I could have, but I ended up just coming up with this idea going, oh, okay, I can have everybody else kind of contribute just, a page or 2 worth of material and just talk about their favorite movie. And it eventually, I got 48 people that first book, and then that morphed into, okay, well, why don't I just do 2 more books? And just because I'm a little nuts sometimes, and I overdo it myself. So yeah, I put out 2 more at the same time. That was back in November, December that those came out.
And it's cool because I'm a huge fan of anthologies, and that's almost an anthology book, because you're constantly reading something different about different movies, and all of us, whether it's in our favorites or not, we all can identify with someone else's favorite horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, that's something that, like, my favorite always is going to be House. That's a movie that I think is the perfect horror movie. It's the perfect mix of horror, comedy. So don't tell me yours yet, because that is one of my questions.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's start off with your first horror movie. What got you into it? And the first horror movie that you watched was?
Well, the first movie was Watcher in the Woods, but I didn't remember it all through my childhood, so it didn't have like a huge effect on me. But then, I mean, I watched Ghostbusters and Gremlins. Those are very, very good experiences for me too. But the first real horror movie that got me into everything was Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3: Dream Warriors, and that is my favorite as well.
Okay, and it's funny because I've talked about Dream Warriors on this podcast more than any other movie. And I think that goes to show just how influential this movie truly is. And when it comes to the nightmare movies, I've always said that if you take away the last 3 minutes of Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, that's the perfect horror movie. It's the best horror movie of all time. But when it comes to the cast of characters, I think it's impossible to top Dream Warriors. The kids in this movie, and this is the first movie where really, that I can remember in the horror genre growing up, where the characters are like, you know what? Let's get this fucker. Let's not sit back. Let's get this guy.
Yeah.
And growing up, this was another one that absolutely blew my mind. So let's talk about this movie a little bit. What scene affected you the most in this movie?
Well, mostly it was getting over my fear. I had built up this thing where when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something, I had seen a piece of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1, like the boiler room scene, like right at the beginning, and my mom was watching it, and I was like, nope, I swore I'll never watch a Freddy movie. And so I would tell kids, tell kids on the playground, no, I'm not going to see that. And eventually my friend Eddie, he borrowed a VHS copy that was stolen from our local video store by another kid. And then so he brought it over, and I'm like, all right, if we're going to watch this, you just tell me when I need to close my eyes. He told me when I needed to close my eyes, but then I kept peeking because it was like, oh, he's making jokes. Oh, I have a sixth sense of humor too. This totally matches with me. And so that was it. After that, I was done. Freddy was it. I was him for Halloween for like 3 years. And,
that's awesome. And how old were you when you watched it for the first time?
Probably about 11, I think. So it was right, maybe a year after it came out.
Sure. And I always want to talk about this. Which death, especially in this movie, because there's so many great ones.
Yeah.
Which one, I hate saying your favorite, but which one stuck with you the most in this movie?
That's probably the veins. What's his face when they pull the veins out? I forget his name right now, but yeah. Or Welcome to Prime Time, bitch. That's another good one. And
that it's funny because I've talked about this on the podcast before, but that was my go-to line, man. Like when I was a little kid, I'd be playing like Super Nintendo, and I'd get to the end boss and just be like, "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch." Like, that was my thing, man. And I think you're right. I think this is the first one where Freddy, he had a dark sense of humor in the first one. Like, "Hey, Tina, watch this." But
he takes his face off and he's laughing at her and shit.
Yeah, but in this one, he really brings the jokes in this one. I think Part 2 was just dark all the way around. But in this one, he really did bring those jokes. And one thing I wanted to talk about that I love when it comes to the cinematography is in the vein death. How in some of the shots, you see Freddy controlling him. But then in other ones, it's just him walking. And I think that's brilliant. Because that's one thing I love in Nightmare is when Tina's getting drug up the wall, you don't see Freddy in that scene. So it is left to your imagination. So I love how Nightmare on Elm Street really does that for you.
Yeah. They give you a little bit of taste of Freddy, so you know what's happening for real. But you're seeing it from the perspective of the people that are actually there in the room with them, and so that's how it should be done for the most part, right?
Yeah, especially in a movie like that where it's a lot of dream sequences. It should be left to your imagination. That's how it, like you said, that's how it should be, and it's so much more fun when you can use your imagination.
Yeah, that's what made that Tina death so insane was that you didn't see it, and you just see these slashes going across her body. And it's like, whoa.
And then you put yourself in Rod's position because Tina, like, how the fuck can I save you if I don't know what's hurting you?
Yeah, everybody, he's gonna be ostracized as being the bad guy, and it's gonna be his fault. And yeah, genius scene.
Absolutely. So, what's the first thing that you think of when you think of Dream Warriors?
Hmm. Oh, I don't know. Probably, I mean, probably Freddy, or that it's my favorite movie or horror movie. Yeah, I don't know. I've had so much experience with that movie, and then surrounding that movie in my life, of meeting the people that have made it, and I have tons and tons of stories. And so I have this one poster that I've gotten a lot of people to sign over the years. It's probably been 20 years of collecting signatures. I'm still kind of slowly just doing that here and there whenever I know somebody's going to be somewhere. Um, and it's actually shit. It's right up. It's right up. Wait, let me see. Where's my finger? There, right
Right
there.
there.
Yeah, I keep it right there. Um, so that's kind of like my prized possession because I got to work with Wes. I got to work with
Oh, man.
Heather. Um, uh, 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 oh my God, Penelope from she's the Welcome to Prime Time,
Yeah.
and then I met other people over the years. And it's been pretty amazing. So
And one thing about Nightmare 3 that really gets overlooked a lot is I think this is, at least in my opinion, because growing up, I was really big into the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Streets. But this was the first time really that I can remember where they had the balls to kill the original final girl, and for them to
yeah,
really take that dive with Heather Langenkamp, Nancy, to bring her back just to kill her. Like that was such a ballsy move on
yep,
their part. I mean, that's almost Season of the Witch ballsy, like
yeah,
you're really taking a gamble in doing that. So, and they did it so well. Like she was able to educate them and help them before, but it gave you that, oh my gosh, not Nancy.
yeah.
So that's
It's
something that I thought this movie had that not a lot of other movies had at that point was the balls to kill off your original final girl.
yeah, it's almost like Psycho when you're killing off your main character, fairly early in the movie, but I mean, she was our hero, and so seeing her die in that was like, oh, okay. Even when that was the first movie that I had seen in the series, you're still like, oh shit, that sucks. She was the
Yeah.
first one that killed, fought him. So
So we did talk about how your favorite movie is also this,
no, my
but let me
favorite
ask you,
horror movie is not favorite movie. Yeah,
what's your favorite movie?
it's F for Fake, Orson Welles' technically his last movie.
Nice.
It's
See, my favorite movie is not a horror movie either. My favorite
mm,
movie will always be Back to the Future.
mm,
I think that's
yeah.
I adore that movie.
Yeah, great movie.
So,
All those
as a
movies.
big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, another question for you: your opinion on the Nightmare on Elm Street remake?
Well, yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. Um, it took it tried a little bit of the humor, but I didn't. Obviously, we're not going to like anybody that tries to embody that character unless it's just perfect. And that, I mean, what's his name?
Yeah, Jackie Earl
Jackie
Haley.
Earl Haley. Yeah. Um, he's a good actor, but I don't. It just didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't feel like it was right in the right spirit. And I think the way that they really kind of missed out on things is that Freddie likes to take a part of your personality
Yep.
and turn that on you. And when you watch that movie, you don't see that. And you end up like seeing like 2 or 3 boiler room kills, and it's so the setting is the same. It's just the same old shit each time. Um, so yeah, it was a misfire.
I agree. And one thing I've talked about this a lot, I don't think that a child molester is better than a child killer or vice versa. But man, Freddie was a child killer. He wasn't a child molester. Like that's just one thing that always really bothered me with this movie is the fact that if you're going to take Freddie and completely flip him on his head and do something completely different,
Mm-hmm.
don't recycle a lot of the same scenes and deaths from the original one. Like
Yeah, that too.
if you're gonna totally redo the character, then redo the whole thing. Don't CGI the face through. Like just redo
Yeah,
the whole thing if you're gonna do
yeah.
that. So that was my opinion on that too. But I did like the micro naps. I thought that was pretty cool. But that was
Oh
the only
yeah,
saving grace in that movie for me was the micro naps.
yeah. I mean, I haven't tried to watch it in 10 years because I was just like, I own it. I probably got it for free somewhere, and then I just do it in my stack and
Right.
save it for a rainy day when I want to get angry at something. But maybe
See,
I'll like it more.
it's one of those movies that I've watched probably 5 or 6 times. Like just like you know what, it'll be better this time. It'll be
Mm.
better this time, and it's not. And I'm never a person. I won't bash art in any way. If you're out there making art, good for you. even if I'm not a fan, it's just not for me, and
Yep.
that's how I feel about this movie. I'll never bash it because you had the balls to go out there and do it, and you're creating art and somebody loves it. So good on you. But it's not for me. The Nightmare remake was not for me. But besides that, the only other one that I really disliked was the one with the little kid, the 5.
Oh, Dream Child. Yeah.
Didn't
Oh,
like
you
it,
didn't
man.
like it? Oh, there's
No.
some really interesting stuff in there, I think it's fun. I enjoy it. 4 is, significantly better than 5 by far. But
4 is actually growing up the one I watched the most. So I
yeah.
always say 4 is my favorite just because as a kid, it was always Friday 3, Halloween 3, Nightmare 4.
Oh, okay.
Those were the ones for me growing up that I just actually gravitated to. But the older I got, the more I realized that when it came to the cast and the story, 3 was probably the best. I love the kids in 3, and it really sucks now that I'm such a big fan of 3 to watch 4 and see all the kids from 3 that get killed in 4, and seeing nothing against Tuesday night. Tuesday's great. She's awesome.
I was just hanging out with her 2 days ago.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was cool.
She seems like such a sweetheart, but I'm not a big fan of recasting characters. I get you had to because I believe Patricia Arquette was pregnant when they went to film Nightmare 4. This is one of the stories I've heard.
Okay.
But
I've actually talked to her about it.
Oh, really?
I asked her why she wasn't in Nightmare 4.
I don't know if you can disclose that, but
yeah, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna tell because whatever she told me was a kind of a secret. But she. I mean, I will say that her agent said she shouldn't do 4. She was trying to get out of horror and like not get pigeonholed in horror, and so she made the right move. But she told me about 5 reasons why she didn't do that movie. Because I asked her. And she gets killed off early on, so it was like, okay, well, let's have somebody, just let somebody else do it.
Right. See, I love her, and I think I love her in True Romance, man. I think that's another movie that's top 10 for me, and she is absolutely amazing in that movie. But starting your career with Nightmare 3, because I believe that was her first role. I mean, you could absolutely do so much worse than Nightmare 3 for your first role.
Oh yeah, especially when it was like number one. It was a number one movie, probably at the box office. How could you go wrong?
And one thing I wanted to touch on too that I think is so impressive about the Nightmare on Elm Street series, because I consider the big 3 to be Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Mm-hmm. And what always set apart Nightmare on Elm Street for me is it was always Robert Englund. It was always him as Freddy up until the Jackie Earle Haley one. But, I think that's why it was so hard for us, because there's not a mask here. If somebody else plays Michael or someone else plays Jason, it's still just this big brute that's stabbing people. But, Robert Englund is Freddy.
Yeah.
So I think that was the big thing for us. And again, not downplaying people that have played Michael Myers or Jason, because they all do amazing work. CJ Graham's a great dude. He played Jason. Mm-hmm. Kane Hodder's one of the best stuntmen of all time.
Yeah.
So I'm not downplaying that, but Freddy has that personality that you can't duplicate that. So that's something I always respected about the Nightmare on Elm Street series, was it was always him. You didn't have that switch off on other people.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it was so tough at least for the real fans, to sit through the 2010 version and this weirder kind of, who's this guy making this jokes in this in this weird face paint thing going on? What is this?
And it's funny you say that, because somebody just shared on, it was either Facebook or Instagram, one of the two. It was from like 1989 or 1990, and it was Freddy Krueger promoting stuff on Nickelodeon. And to me, that is just funniest thing in the whole world, that they brought in a child killer to, promote things, like, try our Doritos, it's the funniest thing in the world to me, man. But that's what it was back then. Like, that's how big Freddy Krueger was. This child killer in R-rated horror movies was promoting stuff on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, that's just nuts. He was a cultural phenomenon, and I loved every second of getting swept into it. It's so weird. It's so weird that something like that can happen. We might see that for like a Marvel movie villain or something like that, but I don't know, the cultural revolution. Revolution, but just it was insane, and I was so glad to be able to live through it and get swept up in it.
Oh, and it's one of those things that, and we've talked about this on the podcast before too. You don't get rom-com con. That's how important horror is to us. Like, people will take days to get ready and get in makeup and go to these cons dressed up as their favorite horror icons. And you see these guys like Robert Englund, who is one of the scariest guys in the world, but then you meet him and he is the nicest, kindest guy in the world. And it just shows how great the community is and how all together they are. I'll shorten up the story really quick, but we went to a con, me and my son, and he was about 5 at the time. And Norman Reedus, Daryl from The Walking Dead, was there.
Yeah.
And my son and me waited in line for about 2.5 hours to meet Norman Reedus. And my son wanted a picture with him. And we got up there and security was like, no pictures, no autographs. And my son was just devastated, and you could see it. And Norman asked one of the guys that was there, he said, hey, do you mind grabbing a chocolate out of the bag for the kid? So the guy walked away and he was like, pick your son up real quick and snap a picture. So we picked him up and took a picture real quick. And it was something he didn't have to do. But just because he could see, that to me is like, that's a true artist right there. He could have easily been like, hey man, that's rules, I have nothing to do with it. Yeah. But he was just like, let's do this real quick for the kid. So that to me just shows how influential these horror guys can be and how sweet they can be to do something like that for a kid.
Yeah. It's the actors in Hollywood are not as bad as some people might think they are,
Right.
And the more that there are conventions that people can go and meet their favorite stars, the more they'll see. But I guess that will go away a lot more, that facade of, in fact, Hollywood actors, like,
yeah. And then people got to understand too, everybody has bad days, man.
Yes, that too.
And some of us can't handle it as good as others. Sometimes we blow up. That shit happens. We're all human. Just because you had a bad experience with someone one time, dude, I had a bad burger from McDonald's at one point. I still go back. Like sometimes just shit happens. You have one bad day. You can't judge everybody for it on one bad day.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I always do end these with the same thing. We end it with a skull count. The original Nightmare on original Nightmare on Elm Street. No, 3. We're doing 3. My apologies.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3. We're ranking that. 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. What's your skull count for Nightmare 3?
Oh, of course, it's 5 all the way.
I had a feeling, man. I got to share this. Josh Shepard, good buddy of mine, drummer for Coheed and Cambria. He has this thing where he's going to get the scene with Freddy's head coming out of the TV and her head. He's going to get that mounted on his wall like a replica. And I was like, dude, I so got to steal that idea, because that'd be the dopest thing to walk into someone's house and just see that hanging. Like, that'd be the coolest shit in the world.
I became friends with Penelope over the years. I met her at a film festival just kind of randomly, and I've been kind of kept in touch with her. I actually got to bring her out of retirement. She was retired from acting, and last year I did a tribute to Larry Cohen and had a script read of one of his unproduced screenplays, and I had her come and play one of the characters, and she's like, she was very nervous, but she's like the sweetest person. So.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
And it's cool to hear those stories about how these people are still willing to come and honor somebody, even if they're retired. She came out of retirement for you, and to honor him, like that's so cool, man. Such a cool thing to hear.
Yeah.
Well, hey, man, thank you for taking the time. Don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, make sure you're going down here in the description, checking out his social media, checking out the trilogy of books and all the things he has coming up. Until next time, stay what you are, keep talking horror, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.